Hi guys, welcome to the RebelEngineer YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be exposing all the lies and misconceptions that people online and on YouTube are telling you about the current layoffs that are going on in our economy. And I will also be telling you what you can do to prepare yourself for these layoffs in 2024. So the first thing you need to understand is corporate layoffs from now on will be an annual event, just like stock buybacks, because corporate layoffs, by and large, are beneficial to the company's bottom line as well as the company's stock price. So when the mainstream media and companies say that they have to do layoff because they overhired during the pandemic, those are all lies because they already fired tons of people last year. So at this point in time, I believe they're already done firing people for the pandemic overhire. So 5 to 10 years from now, if you do layoff or performance-based firing every single year, you cannot say that it is because of overhire during the pandemic. Of course, there are exceptions that when companies do layoff, their stock price went down, but those are the exceptions and not the rule. The vast majority of the time, especially before earnings, companies usually do layoff and firings as a way to boost stock price, just like stock buybacks. So I believe that from 2023 forward, it will be an annual event, and they will not be doing layoffs with severance. They will be likely doing layoff using PIP or performance improvement plan, or maybe they will just straight out firing based on performance. And they will be raising performance bar, not because they want to maintain the health of the company, but because of short-term profits, because they are being hit by high interest rates and high inflation. That's what it is. So from now on, layoff will be an annual event, and it will not be something that is on the news anymore. It's just like stock buyback. Okay, so I can show you a couple examples here. So you see this articles on Axios. It says like after tech layoffs, tech stock boom. So yeah, this is in April 2023. And after the big tech layoffs, remember last year, after the big tech layoffs, companies' stock price went way up. And so, year-to-date performance of selected tech stock, the stock price really went up after layoffs, by and large. Not all companies are like this. Like when companies have good balance sheets and a good revenue and profit and they do layoffs, then usually it's because they want to boost the stock price. Of course, when you do layoffs, usually you have to do severance, but less and less companies are doing severance layoffs nowadays, and they're moving into performance-based layoff, which save them on severance costs. Okay, so there's another article here. Layoffs are sending big tech stocks soaring. So you can see here, this is in last January, and Google stocks, Meta, Amazon and Microsoft, they all went up. Their layoffs last year and the stock price went way up. I believe that the board of directors and many CEOs realized that this is another way to do stock buybacks. So it's almost like stock buybacks that you can just fire people, and you can fire people using a performance-based basis. And that's the way I believe that things will be going on from now. So every year, companies will be cutting 5 to 10% of their workforces, just like Neutron Jack said. So who's Neutron Jack? Neutron Jack is the former CEO of GE, and he was the one who invented the stack ranking system, which compare employees on a stack rank basis and cut the bottom 10% of the worst performing employees. And it's a controversial topic in the management world whether companies should be cutting the bottom 10% of employees every year. But judging from the stock price of GE, I'm not sure if that stack ranking culture actually works, because their stock price kind of, like if you look at here, their stock price is not doing really good, historically speaking. That stock ranking system definitely would decrease collaboration across employees. So I'm not sure if that would work in the long run. But again, no management technique is perfect. And so in the short term, which is what most CEOs care about, they would prefer doing these layoffs just to increase the share prices. And here there is another article I would like to talk about. So yeah, waves of layoffs, Google stock price reaching a new high. So this article is in January of this year, 2024. And after the layoff, Google stock price reached new high. So companies just do layoff as a way to boost their share prices nowadays. Okay, so now that we understand that layoffs will be an annual event from now on, because companies are essentially addicted to the stock's price going up as a result of performance-based layoffs without severance. Okay, so now that we understand that performance-based layoff is essentially just a tool for management to increase the stock price of the companies. Now, I will be breaking down some of the advices online with regards to layoffs. Right? Many people online have been chiming in and, advising people on how to avoid layoffs in general. I would say that most of these advices suck because they started from a scarcity mindset. So the thing is, if you want to be successful in life and career, I believe that you have to operate from an abundance mindset and not a scarcity mindset. Most of the people online, when advising their audiences on dealing with layoffs, usually they just say work harder, or contribute more, or climb ladders, or move up or out. But the thing about this is, working harder is a race to the bottom. From my own experience, I have been working at very high performing companies. Most of them are big tech companies. And also I have been working at startup before. And the idea that you just work harder, there's no limit to working harder. There's no limit to pulling in more hours. There are always employees who are willing to sacrifice their families, mental health of their children, to push even harder on the weekend, night, sacrifice their sleep to do more. Basically, working harder is a race to the bottom because it is a race of the slaves. There's no limitation to working harder. Compete with one another to see who pulls the longest hours, and we only have 24 hours a day. And the people who pull the most hours will hurt their family and their own mental health in the long run. Also, if you are like me, as I get older, I cannot really keep up with all the damage to my health. And as your health gets worse and your experience go up, and you move to different companies, you are actually expected to perform even better on a worse health and on a less time budget. Because now that maybe you have families or you have other obligations as you age, so your life maintenance tasks will take longer in a day. So it will be harder for you to actually maintain a higher performance, work longer hours compared to younger colleagues, maybe of the same levels, without lots of sacrifice into your health and your personal life. So most people, when they advise others on avoiding layoffs, they usually start from a scarcity mindset. So they usually say, don't be the bottom 10%, or be the top 10%, or avoid being in the bottom bucket, or be the top performers, work harder, contribute more. That is a scarcity mindset. That is a fear-based ideology. I would like you to understand that nobody is irreplaceable in a company. Not even the CEO, not even the principal engineer, not even your manager. Nobody is irreplaceable. Let's say if the entire ship is going down, everyone is fired. There's no one that is truly irreplaceable in a company. And I can show you some examples. If you look back from last year, we have this Jeremy Jocelyn, who is a staff software engineer at Google. You have to understand, a staff software engineer at Google is an L6. L6, they essentially have contributions to a small part of the industry. And he got laid off last year. If you're an L6 at Google, you're at the 0.0001% of the very best of the engineers around the world. And there's also here in a thread on Y Combinator, there's an L9 distinguished software engineer. So these are like extremely talented and extremely smart people. I worked at Google before, so I understand this, right? So it is actually really hard to recruit these people. I mean, they are the top 0.00001% of all the engineers in the world. They still got fired. So you have to understand, if an L9 distinguished engineer can be replaced at Google, then nobody is really irreplaceable. And I can actually give you some other examples. So here you can see Sheryl Sandberg, who stepped down as the CEO of Facebook 1 or 2 years back. I believe it was 1 or 2 years ago. And you can clearly see that she said she stepped down and she wants to spend more time for families and other initiatives. I have friends who are VP and SVP in some tech companies. You have to understand, in the C-suite world, when people say they step down because they want to spend more time with family, it means that they were fired. She was fired by Mark Zuckerberg. She did not step down. And here, another example is YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki. Wojcicki. I'm not sure if I spelled that name correctly, but she seemed to be irreplaceable. She built YouTube since the day that it was acquired by Google all the way until now, almost like very recently, right? And she built YouTube all the way from the day that it was a startup that was just acquired by Google, all the way until today, which become a behemoth social media giant. It looks like she's irreplaceable. She got fired here, she got fired. Chief Product Officer Neil Mohan will take over YouTube as Senior Vice President. Yeah, she got fired. She said like, start a new chapter, focus on my family, health, and personal projects I'm passionate about. AKA, she got fired. You have to understand, nobody is truly irreplaceable here. Even Fitbit co-founders recently got fired from Google. And if you still remember, Steve Jobs got fired from Apple. So nobody is really irreplaceable. The idea that you work so hard to become irreplaceable as an employee, it's just a joke. I believe that people win in life by working smart and negotiate, and not by working hard. Recently, if you watch the news, you can see that Elon Musk essentially won 25% of Tesla. So you can clearly see that he's right now having 13% of the shares, he won 25% of the shares. And he can say that it is not because of economics or something like that, but in my mind, I believe that, what successful people do. I mean, they work smart, they don't work hard. The thing is, he doesn't just work hard, he works smart, and he negotiates. It is negotiation. After 4 years of working at Google, I realized that people win not by working hard and pulling in the hours or trying to not be in the bottom 10% of the company. Like whatever you define the bottom 10% is, right? The metric, the people who actually define the metrics are the winners. And the people who actually know how to negotiate and know their market values are going to be the winners. And that is exactly the reason why I started this YouTube channel. I would like to expose all the lies, all the BS, everything that the mainstream media and also other YouTubers are advising people, because most of these advices are fear-based. They come from a scarcity mindset, beta mindset, and not from an abundance mindset. An abundance mindset is very important if you want to succeed in the engineering war, and I believe in the war in general. You have to understand that the world is not fair. As software engineers, we always play by the rules. We work hard, we follow patterns, design patterns, distributed system patterns, system design. We always follow a certain path and patterns. And we always think that if we follow these rules and these paths and patterns and these distributed system designs, then we will have a great system, we'll great software, right? So we usually as software engineers, we use that mindset into day-to-day life. I believe that we are living in a fair and structured world, but we don't. Many YouTubers that I know in the coding community, when they talk about avoiding layoffs, they usually put on a scarcity mindset and they say, just work harder, pull in more hours, become irreplaceable, whatever that means, and then you avoid layoffs. And that comes from a scarcity mindset. They try to give you a scarcity mindset to sell you their stuff, like their courses, their training programs, etc. So I would like to give you a quote that I really like. It is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So if you become the fastest rat in the race, it does not mean that you will escape the race. You have to play a different game. You have to play a different battle. You can't play the 9-to-5 battle, work harder, hopefully become irreplaceable, and thinking that you will escape the rat race one day. You will escape the layoff one day. Layoffs, as I said before, is part of the rat race. It is part of companies from now on. It is an annual event. So enough talks about layoffs. What you can do to prepare yourself for all of these layoffs, and what kind of race should you choose to get rid of this rat race, to get rid of this annual layoff event? Well, I believe there are 4 ways you can avoid layoff. The first thing I would advise you to do is to prepare for interviews always. That means that you need to brush up your resume, brush up your LinkedIn, prepare your interviews, behavioral or technical. If you are a software engineer, lead code is not enough nowadays. You need to also study more on system design and more on behavioral, because most companies that in the past couple of months I have interviewed with, most companies care more about system design, behavioral, especially the behavioral part, than the lead code part. Most companies nowadays ask, easy to medium lead code question. Even Meta, they ask only medium level questions. So there's no need for you to geek out on the hard, lead code questions. And you need to pay more attention to system design and also behavioral interviews. If you are not a software engineer, pay attention to your interviews. Prep for your interviews every weekend or so. I really like this quote from Sun Tzu that the best defense is to attack. So I think that you should still perform. I'm not saying you should slack off from work to, go interview around, but definitely you should always be prepared and be aware and always be prepared to interviews at any other companies at any time. If your company has been laying off people in this past year, you should be preparing and brushing up resumes and preparing every week or every other week or so. But if your company has been laying off people very recently, especially if those laid off people work closely with you, you need to probably start interviewing elsewhere. And if your company is actively doing layoff right now and you believe that you will be on the line for layoff, you need to prepare your resumes and go interviews with other companies ASAP. My second advice is you should treat what you do as a profession and not a job. What I mean by that is you should strive for excellence and greatness in what you do, not because you are fearful of being laid off, not because you need to keep your job, but because you want to be great. You want to be a valuable person in the economy, you want to contribute to society, and you want to be a great professional, just like a professional basketball player. Not because you are fearful of being laid off from a company or you're being fearful you want to keep the job. You cling to a job, you cling to the corporation, you buy into their corporate bullshit, but because you really want to keep getting better and better what you do every day and contribute more to the society. The number 3 advice I would like to give is to start freelancing or side hustling or getting contract work on the side. This is not legal advice, but when you start any of these types of side jobs, you have to pay attention that your side jobs won't be having conflict of interest with your 9-to-5 jobs. Well, of course, there are companies that do everything, right? So for example, Google, Meta, big companies, they create everything, products in all industries, right? But definitely if you are not directly compete with them, and this is not legal advice again, if you do not directly compete with them and you're making less than $250K a year, for example, I believe that you are better off asking for forgiveness instead of asking for permissions. So if you have always wanted to start something on the side, if you have always wanted to hedge yourself against the slavery mindset and the rat race, then now is the time to start those ventures. Don't hesitate. You are too small to be a threat to your companies and they won't care. Don't wait until you get fired and then start your side hustle or start your business, right? You should start it on the side. Again, these are not legal advices, so please consult with your lawyer if you have any questions. So software engineers, I believe one of the greatest side hustles can be YouTube, like what I'm doing right now. I believe we are living in a world where software is driven largely by data and not any particular technology or any particular breakthrough, but everything in the tech world nowadays is driven by data. And I believe that YouTubers and their audiences in general are the ones who create data. Data is a new goal. And I believe that if you are a software engineer and you care about the technology, you want to contribute to technology, one of the best ways to contribute to technology nowadays is to become a YouTuber, to become a content creator, to become a data creator. I believe I heard this quote from somebody else, but a job, essentially a job, stands for just over broke. And a PhD stands for poor, helpless, desperate. So you don't want to be in these situations. And these are what schools are teaching our children to pursue. They want our children to pursue PhD, poor, helpless, desperate, so they can get a job, job, just over broke. You don't want to stuck in a 9-to-5 forever. You want to chase freedom. A 9-to-5 job, I believe, is always a lord and peasant system. No matter how companies try to sugarcoat it, where if there is something happen to the company, the CEO just needs to say sorry and keeps his or her job, whereas all the blame is shifted to the employees, and those are the ones who actually build the product. The employees, the workers in the factory, software engineers are the ones who actually build the product and not the CEO. And whenever there's anything happens, they are the one who are let go first, not the CEO. Of course, when you do extra side hustles, extra side contract gigs, you have to put in more hours. But at least the long hours is going to create another stream of income. It's going to create another diversification for your active income. Instead, you can work for the company, you can put in more hours, but you still have, at the end of the day, one income. And you still cling to that one job and still have only one source of income. Okay, so the fourth advice and also the final advice I would like to give, especially if you live in the United States or in Western countries, to move to another country. And one of the main reasons is not only just high cost of living, but in most Western world, most people are beholden to their employers for their health care, health insurance. And that is a big limitation to your freedom. Outside of the Western world, if you go to any other countries, especially in Asia, you will notice that employees are not actually dependent on the employers for health insurance. It is only a Western phenomenon. And that way you will have way more freedom to start your freelancing, your side contract works. In most countries, most jobs are actually freelancing and contract works. And the employees are responsible for paying their own insurance. Also, most software engineers in these countries prefer to be contractors or freelancers compared to being tied to a 9-to-5 jobs. The FANG engineer's prestige is only a phenomenon in the United States, where healthcare and perks are attached to one particular employer. Things that I noticed about lots of other people is when they pack up, they actually, just move from cost of living state to a lower cost of living state. But the thing is, if you are packing up and flying anyway, how about just packing up and flying to another country? Because you are packing up, you're selling stuff, you're selling your house anyway, and you move to another state on a flight. So if you have to fly anyway, maybe you are better off flying just to fly to another country or another continent, right? And I have lots of friends in third world countries like Vietnam and Thailand who actually work as a side contractors for many of the big companies and startups alike in the Bay Area, and they earn US dollars. The cost of living in these countries is exponentially lower than the United States. So they actually save more on after-tax income than any Americans that I know. Even when you work at FANG companies in the United States, you can't really compare with a person living in third world countries that work maybe 2 jobs for no-name American companies. But the idea of moving to a cheaper country is not just for saving money, but actually for your freedom. So if you work at FANG companies in the United States, you likely will save probably more than a person who work in a third world country that work 2 or 3 jobs that are outsourced from the United States. But the thing is, you will have less freedom. And in many cases, in many high cost of living areas like San Francisco, you will likely even save less than these foreign workers. Most of these foreign workers, they work for companies in the United States that pay salary equal to low cost of living areas like Missouri or Minnesota, etc. Because they live in a country where the cost of living is exponentially lower, they end up saving just as much as people in high-tech, high cost of living cities like Seattle or San Francisco. So I and my wife are actively working on our plan to move our family to one of these lower cost of living countries and start working contract jobs. But it would be like a 2 to 3 years initiative. And if you look at me like I'm an ex-Google, and when you see if the next Google employees of many big companies start to move to a third world countries and rather do contract jobs, you can probably see that there's no point in chasing higher compensation in high cost of living areas. You are much better off living in a third world country. They call it third world, but third world and first world notations are no longer up to date. Many of these countries, they have nicer airports, less pollutions, more amenities, better service in general than even all these first world countries. The outsourcing to remote work and AI will become a trend from now on as companies try to cut costs to deal with high interest rate and high inflation and to boost their own stock price. In short, choose your own battle wisely. Don't just choose a battle because your parents tell you so, or you see your friends doing that, or you see everyone is doing 9 to 5, so you just go ahead and do 9 to 5. Choose a battle that will maximize your freedom and not just from money or some random statuses. If you have families and you have mortgages to pay, maybe you will have to stop with your 9 to 5 job, but always be prepared for new interviews and also be prepared on the background for a side hustle that you can lean on when the market really go haywire. And also, I will give you one last quote. When in peace, prepare for war. So when you are having a 9 to 5 job, you should prepare for the day that you no longer have a 9 to 5. You have health insurance, you should be prepared for the day that you actually no longer have the insurance. And it's not just an emergency fund. I have known many Google engineers who were laid off from last year and up until this point are still unemployed. Not just engineers, but anybody who works 9 to 5 to chase freedom. Chase greatness in your profession, chase your passion, and chase freedom, and not chasing some random titles. That's the entire reason that I created this YouTube channel. I believe that people should be chasing freedom and don't believe in the corporate lies that they are doing layoff because of difficult economy or because they overhired during the pandemic. No, layoffs will be an annual event from this year on now. Mark my words. When in peace, prepare for war. That's the quote that will sum up this video of mine. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.